Hello, you are listening to From Equate to Zama. I'm your host, Karen Miller. This podcast is about the adventures of two women from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, who worked for the U.S. Army at Camp Zama, Japan, from 1953 to 1955. Their stories are told through hundreds of letters written home. Episode 48, letters 157 to 159B. So, it seems like no matter what I do, I can't escape the hurricane issue here. There's just a brief mention of Hurricane Hazel. So I looked it up, and 1954, Hurricane Hazel hit Harrisburg pretty hard with up to 90-mile-per-hour winds. The river didn't flood, but roofs got ripped off and power was out for a long time. So I guess that it's just a theme of the podcast. I'll just have to accept it. Finally, there is something that compels me to want to visit Japan. There have been a few things, that have been somewhat interesting. But after the detailed descriptions of climbing Mount Fuji that I've read both from Peg and then also in modern times, I decided that wasn't for me. But the description of the temples and the resort at Nikko have me hooked. Kanaya looks like a mix of one of my favorite resorts, Pinehurst, and lovely old Japanese architecture. The resort is the oldest in Japan, having been opened in 1873. The rooms are large and gorgeous, and the public areas of the property are also incredible. The oldest part of the resort was constructed in 1893, and famous guests include Frank Lloyd Wright, who stayed there in 1905, Helen Keller, who stayed there in 1937, Albert Einstein in 1922, and then Eleanor Roosevelt, Charles Lindbergh, Lou Gehrig, and President Eisenhower stayed there, but I don't have dates for those. Wow. I digitized the slides that Bern took of this trip this week. I wish that she had taken some of the resort, but they seem to be all of the temples, and they're incredible. This is where the location of the See No Evil, Hear No Evil of the monkeys. This is where the origin of that was. And the pictures, I went on the website, and they showed a lot of pictures in the winter with snow. It was really nice. So, of course, I Googled and found a flight from Greensboro for less than $1,000. Not that I'm going, but I suspect the accommodations will be quite expensive. So I didn't look. When I inherited the letters, I received 5 large metal storage boxes of slides from Peg. And I've been waiting for technology to catch up to my needs. So, because about 15 years ago, I tried to digitize slides that belonged to my grandfather, and it was just tedious. His slides were all in shoeboxes, which I don't think was optimal for their preservation. And the system I was using didn't let me modify them at all, so I couldn't make them lighter or darker. And it just seemed like a big waste of time. So I bailed on it. So this week I started to try to digitize Pegs. And of course, I got a new slide scanner, and I'm so impressed with how organized they are. Thanks, Peg. They were well taken care of and all these years. And so far, I've processed a few hundred slides and haven't found any that were damaged or degraded at all. So now you know what I've been up to this week. By the way, it feels like fall here too. That's what happens when the temperature drops 20 degrees. It feels so great to be able to have the windows open. So if you hear birds, bugs, and the occasional car passing by, that would be why. It feels so great to have the windows open, and I'm not a fan of 90 degrees with high humidity. I don't know if anybody is, but I'm certainly not. So let's get started with letter 157. It was written the 23rd of October, 1954 at 1100 hours. Hi, John. Maybe I won't be busy from now on and I can get a few lines batted out to you. Things around HQ AFFE are pretty lively these days. AFFE is conducting a war game called Texas Ranger, for which game members of all services are on duty with AFFE. It's all hush-hush stuff. So why are we telling people? Okay. Except that we do know that they have problems to work out on operations during the war. We had another one a few months ago in which all the sections of AFFE sent representatives up to Camp Fuji to actual maneuvers. I think maybe I told you that when they must go out and actually do the problem there are Takusan footsore soldiers and officers upon their return. These pencil pushers get mighty soft sitting behind their desks all day, every week, and it really wears them out to tote a gun and equipment for a few days. Anyhow, Texas Ranger is just on paper, no running around on the mountains. So we have lots of new faces to look at, Marines, Air Force, Navy, and new Army. I've met some of the Rangers, and it's particularly a pleasure to talk to the ones from Korea. One major I met said that he was in heaven. Just look, you have real tablecloths on the tables. Makes us at AFFE people realize that we do have a good duty station here, even though we sometimes complain about being out in the boondocks, wilderness. I met a Navy commander last night, and we had a real grand time up at the club. Also met an Air Force lieutenant colonel, and all my cronies were at the club together, so we had a fine evening. One of my friends, Faye Pearson, has the loveliest alto voice I've ever heard, and she likes to sing. So we shook the rafters with songs we've learned from the various services. Marine songs are our favorites. And had some melodious harmony singing I've Been Working on the Railroad and other old favorites. All in all, it was lots of fun. I'm at work right now and have been as busy as a paper hanger with the hives. I've never heard that one before. Mary starts her leave on Monday, so I'll be holding down the fort and keeping the troops informed by myself for the next 10 days. However, it shouldn't be too rough because TI&E is conducting a troop information staff school in Tokyo next week, and my bosses will be there almost all the time. Then maybe I can get some of my letters answered. We saw Kathy off in fine style. She was supposed to sail at 6:30 p.m., so we got her through customs and immunizations and helped her to take her luggage on board ship. She went home on a freighter instead of a military transport like the Buckner, which we came over on. I know, I'm not supposed to end a sentence with a preposition. There were 6 of us helping her, and were convinced that the crew was making bets among themselves as to which one of us was actually sailing. Gad, what a noisy bunch we were. Then they told us she wouldn't sail until 7:30, so we all went to eat at Joe's. After delicious steak, we went back to the ship and just took over. One man told us to help ourselves in the galley, and we sure did. Kathy made coffee, some of us had sandwiches, and we started singing, putting the Japanese customs official in near hysterics, laughing at us. We know a few cute Japanese English songs, and he thought they were the most. So then they said the ship wouldn't sail until midnight. And we were all just too tired to last that long, and we spoke sayonara to Kathy at 11:30. We're going to miss her, but I know she's anxious to get home and was disgusted with Japan and the Army, chicken that she is. I got my weekly letter from Mother today with the clippings about Hurricane Hazel. I haven't had time to do more than scan the headlines, but it must have been something awful. She said how Bets and Nancy came over by taxi cab and were so scared. I know just what they felt like. I haven't really gotten scared during a typhoon because we're always in a secure place, but the wind really kicks up a storm, doesn't it? I don't quite understand the money business, but it sounds great. Did you and Mother ever withdraw that $50 from my account that I told you to do? It's yours anytime you want it. Speaking of money, I'm making out fine over here. I haven't been putting any money in the bank since I started my material buying spree, but everything is daijobi. Bern and I are going to Tokyo this afternoon for the weekend. We're going to buy yours and Mother's Christmas presento, and here I go getting excited again. Can hardly wait till you see it. We have some of the packages on their way home, so please pass the word around that when folks get a package from us in the near future, it is a Christmas present not to be opened until then. We're starting to have that beautiful autumn weather that we had last year. It's warm in the daytime, but mornings and evenings are crisp and clear. This is the loveliest time of the year in Japan and almost makes up for the miserable, damp, horrible weather we have the rest of the year. It's about time to close up shop for the day. Now, don't know yet whether I'll mail this right now or try to find time to write some more. Anywho, bye for now. Tacos and love and a big fat kiss. We won. Letter 158 from Peg, written the 25th of October, 1954 at 1200 hours. Dear Mother and Daddy, well, this is the first day of being on my own in the office. So far, it's been very pleasant. A few telephone calls, the news summary, but I found time to type a letter to Sis and Mark. It's certainly a relief to not be so busy, and I only hope it continues all week. Colonel Snavely will be in a little later this afternoon, but I'm going to try to get this typed before then. Do you hear that whistle? It's the noon whistle. Besides the blasted cannon going off every morning at 17:30, we also have a very piercing whistle at 1200 and 1300. Noisy place, nay? Bern and I got a ride into Tokyo on Saturday with Colonel Snavely and his wife. It was a lovely day, and we certainly enjoyed the ride. Then we did some shopping, being most successful in getting exactly what we had in mind for you two. I hope you like it. I wish it were December 25th. We missed connections with a friend of Bern's in Tokyo with whom we were to have dinner, so she and I went to a German restaurant to eat, not nearly so good as Hansa's. And we were in bed by 9:30 p.m. Imagine. On a Saturday night in Tokyo, too. We were both rather bushed, and we were glad to hit the sack early. Sunday, we had breakfast with Bern's friend, Betty Cartmel, and Betty had a friend who has a car and was kind enough to drive us around Tokyo to finish our shopping. Now we're completely finished with our Christmas shopping, except for some gifts for Miriam and others of Bern's friends, and we're going to wrap them tonight. I bought a lamp for myself. The shade of it is a Japanese lantern that folds up, and it's real sharp. Then we caught a train to Yokohama, a cab to Zama, and got home in time to eat and see the second show of Sabrina, which is a very cute movie. It was a nice weekend, but Zama looks especially good to us after Tokyo. Jeanette and her friends think we're crazy for not just loving Tokyo, but I hate the place. In the first place, the old Kaijo, which is a DAC billet, and where we stay when we go there, is a huge building, a former hotel, and the rooms are like barns, dingy and dirty. Tokyo itself is a hustling, bustling city full of traffic, and the cab drivers, at their best, are unbelievably inept. They take chances that no sane person would even consider, and it's a nightmare to travel in them. We were in a Japanese department store on Sunday, and I didn't enjoy the crowded conditions. They push and shove and run into you so that it takes all the joy out of shopping. Tokyo is expensive, too. We don't know our way around enough to utilize the GI buses, so we have to take cabs when we want to go anywhere beyond a few blocks from the old Kaijo. The restaurants are expensive, too. However, I suppose people get used to it, and it does offer a lot in the way of shows, plays, exhibits, etc., providing you can get tickets for them. All in all, I'm always extremely glad to get out of the place and back to quiet Zama. Japanese department stores are about the same as ours. They have elevators, escalators, and the merchandise is much the same as in our department stores, with a few exceptions like a hibachi department and a futon department. Other than that, they sell dresses, furniture, jewelry, sewing machines, hats, etc., none of which measure up to stateside standards. Some people are just fascinated with the stores, but I'd rather shop in the tourist places. Mother, I'm sure your table at Mission Circle was the nicest one, and I'm anxious to hear how the folks liked it. Sure, I'll be glad to show the slides to them some night, which reminds me, we must get some others ready to send to you, but we really have been busy lately. Maybe we'll have a picture show on Wednesday night and write up a narrative for them. In the clipping you sent about Hazel, it mentioned Mrs. Snavely in Hershey, but it wasn't any relative of Colonel Snavely's. I certainly hope the typhoon and hurricane season is over, because they aren't much fun, and I'm always glad I live in a good, substantial building instead of a Japanese home. Okay, cicadas, that's loud. The Air Force colonel I met Friday night stopped in the office this morning to see me, and I was hoping he'd ask me to dinner with him tonight. However, he said he was all shook up about some decision or the other that he has to make, and that he'd call me later. No sweat, though. I really would rather wrap Christmas gifts. Do you folks ever see any of my friends, such as Pete and Avis and Louise and Charles? I got a letter one day last week from Doris Rattle, but she said there wasn't too much news to tell me. It's almost unbelievable that we're so close to the end of our contract, because it seems only last week that we spoke sayonara to Harrisburg. Coming home on the train last night, I thought of how wonderful it would be pulling it to Harrisburg instead of Smoky Yoki and seeing you there waiting for us. Do you ever picture how it will be? Just do two things for us. Please be there on time and have a couple pounds of Lebanon bologna and some pretzels in the house when we get there. I'm almost asleep. Not used to lazy days, so I hope I soon get just a little bit of work to do to keep me interested. It will soon be time for the afternoon news summary, so that ought to keep me awake. Anyhow, no more news for now. I'll sign off with Takusan love. Take care of yourselves until everyone has said hello. Kisses, Peg.
Just when you thought she had left for good and gone, a light twinkled in his eyes.
So when is a person dead? The Victorians believed it was when breathing stops, or when the soul departs, when no one remembers the person, or when their name is no longer uttered. Coming in the fall of 2025, explore my father's side of the family. It also happens to be President William McKinley's. Join me, Lavinia, Katie, Elsie, Hazel, Blaine, and David for Deep Below, a new podcast by Cussewago Productions, available wherever you get your podcasts and at www.deepbelowpodcast.com. Letter 159 from Bern, written the 29th of October, 1954. Good morning, dearest ones. My special guardian angel had a rare treat in store this morning. She awakened me before 6 o'clock, and I was privileged to see a most glorious pageant of color in the eastern sky as Old Soul strutted his stuff for any early risers who happened to be looking. Now I'm enjoying the special freshness of air, which occurs only this early in the day, and as I glance up from this letter from time to time, I can see the very first vanguard of the daily passing parade on my highway. This first group consists of the farm folks trudging along, leading their oxen, with perhaps Mama-san or Grandma-san riding in the cart with a very small child or two. The entire family, except school-age youngsters, will spend the day out there in the rice paddies in back-breaking labor, and some will be returning just as it gets dark, often several hours after our working day has ended. Later in the day, the highway will see streams of school-aged children, the girls clad in navy blue pleated skirts and midi blouses, the boys in old and shabby black suits with rows of shiny gold buttons, and the special cap which denotes the male student. From 7:30 until 8 a.m., the highway will look like the center of any small town, with automobiles swarming in this direction and that. The big lumbering army buses by the dozens bring the Tokyo commuters from the nearby station, and the red and white Japanese buses discharge such a mass of humanity that I'm convinced they are the originators of the trick circus car, which seemingly holds half the world's population in one vehicle. There is one unfamiliar note in this typical traffic jam, however. During a stateside early morning rush hour, one rarely has to hold one's nose shut, mentally at least, against the stench of honey bucket carts as the vendors come back from collecting the night pail and make their way back to the open country to sell their produce for fertilizer. This is one memory of Japan I will be happy to relinquish. This part is continued while at the office. Since page 1, I've had breakfast with Peg and Gladys and walked across camp to T276, our building. 'Tis a beautiful day. One of the few days the sun has appeared and the mountain range which faces Zama is clear-cut and lovely. Sometimes the peaks are hidden by the clouds, other times the outlines seem dim and far away, but on a crystal day like this one, you could feel that you could reach right out and touch them. Every day as I open the door of the billet to go out to breakfast, I wonder how they will look today. These aspects of life in Japan more than make up for the fact that I do not care for this kind of society. Army life is not famed for its culture and refinement, but worse than that, I'm discovering it almost completely lacks integrity. To see so many officers roving and making fools of themselves with Japanese women or American DACs who are not much better has become very distasteful. Then, perhaps a few months later, you will see the same officers at the club with their wives and families. It is sickening. and I'm tired to death of watching it and having everyone else accept it and take it for granted. People don't have to act that way, you know. Enough complaining. The pretzels arrived Wednesday in fine shape, and Peggy gave a generous supply to her boss, Colonel Snavely, who's from Lancaster, PA. His wife called back and told her the kids went wild when they saw them. That is one nice family. Peg has probably already told you that they drove us into Tokyo last weekend. Beforehand, we went to their home, and I met the 2 youngest boys. They were darling, and Peg tells me that all of them, 4 boys, are just as well-behaved and interesting. Mrs. Snavely told us several amusing incidents about family life with 4 boys and varying numbers and types of livestock from snakes to white mice. To add to the confusion, their Japanese houseboy is deathly afraid of animals of all types. She must have fun, Mrs. Snavely, I mean. Tomorrow morning at 6:15, I leave on a tour bus for Nikko. This is the site of many of the famous shrines and temples in Japan, and I am entrusted with the camera to record these for posterity. Peg must work on Saturday, and she can't possibly get off, so I hope to get some good pictures. There's a boy from the office who is also going, and he takes excellent pictures, so perhaps I can get some advice from him. The boss is due in, is past 0800, and I must get to work. See you after coming back from Nikko. Talk to you, love, Bern. Letter 159B from Bern, written the 2nd of November, 1954. Dear Honorable Parent-san, if ever I would love to have the power of words, it is tonight, as I tried to describe the past weekend at Nikko. Have you ever had an experience which you know right from the beginning is going to be a memory you will take out and enjoy and turn over in your mind as long as remembrance remains? Such was the time spent at Nikko. The village is situated high in a mountain range of huge and ancient evergreens of all kinds. Japan's famous small flaming maples were in full dress regalia, too, and to see the vivid splotches of crimson among all that sea of green was a never-to-be-forgotten treat in itself. The first-class romance car in which we traveled had piped-in music provided. The choice of numbers was of excellent taste in the semi-classical vein. It was my first record concert since being in Japan, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. As both of us have probably mentioned before, people set their watches by the Japanese railway system. Each train pulls out at exactly on time. On the way home, a member of our party explained the rather frightening reason for such accuracy. They have no automatic signals, and therefore the only possible way to bring order out of the disastrously possible chaos is to have perfect timing. Gulp. But they do, and everything works out. Temple viewing is an important must in every sightseeing trip ever planned for any part of Japan. Usually we have been tremendously disappointed in them. True, they were of rather interesting architecture, but always they have been shabby and sadly in need of paint. Nikko's temples are said to be the most beautiful in Japan, and they justify all the bragging ever done. Due to generous contributions from this terribly poverty-stricken but beauty-loving people, and with the help of funds from the Japanese government, these temples and shrines are being restored. The colors are most outstandingly clear and beautiful. Carvings on temple gates range from inlaid teakwood on ivory to layers of gold leaf to brilliantly colored mosaic-type patterns, which look like china, but are actually wood carved from a single piece of cryptomeria, which is Japanese cedar. The enclosed card of the famed Yomian Gate doesn't begin to do it justice, but then how can any pictured likeness do justice to the object, which is sometimes called Gate of Twilight, because night shadows will fall before you will move from the spot where you have been trying to take in all that beauty. Or the quaint language of a lovely book, which I bought here, let me quote, "This is the most gorgeous gate in Japan. It is called Day-Spending Gate, in another name, because it is so beautiful that one will forget, and the whole day will be spent here while admiring its beauty." It is on another of the famous gates at Nikko that the original carving of the 3 monkeys, see no evil, speak no evil, and hear no evil, are carved. These are small and seem to actually have the smooth, furry substance of a natural monkey skin. They are exquisitely done in every detail, and even though every tourist yields and buys one of the reproductions, None began to match the original. The carving I bought is rather different from the conventional ones, but it is merely a reminder rather than a work of art. Oh yes, we did the traditional thing and stood in the right spot under the huge crying dragon on the ceiling of one of the temples. As the book quaintly expresses it, when we clap our hands just under the head, we can hear the dragon's cry. Actually, it makes a faint clip-clop echo of the clapping, and since we have been groomed to expect to hear it cry, we are each prepared to solemnly agree, yes, we did hear it cry. After all, we don't want people to think we're stupid, do we? Perhaps proof positive of the attractions of the place is the fact that the conducted tour takes almost 4 hours. All of it from the hotel to shrine to museum and back to the hotel on foot. Need I say more? Mr. Shizuki added heaps to our enjoyment of the day by his wonderful sense of humor, expressed in such sly ways as, these two statues of fire gods are exactly alike except one has mouth closed and one has mouth opened. I call the one with mouth open Mrs. Fire God, and then with a perfectly solemn face, he would give a quick glance at you from his bright brown eyes to see if you got the point. His, would you mind looking at this view? And I like you to take pictures from this place, please, became bywords for the weekend. My most vivid mental picture is of him standing in front of the hotel, loaded down with at least 12 cameras over his shoulders, taking group pictures of our gang and pausing in the middle of it to look up with, please smile and say, I'm a big shot picture maker. Nay? Weather, perfect autumn sunshine, but crisp. Accommodations, excellent. Food, good and Western style. Crowd, most congenial and unclannish. A perfect weekend. So here's some notes and comments from this week's episode. Starting with the fact they finally mentioned my favorite movie. One of my favorite movies is Sabrina. I love the original with Audrey Hepburn and Spencer Tracy. It was always my favorite growing up. And so apparently it was just okay, according to Peg. I never thought it was super intellectual, but the clothes elevated for me. But I guess they were used to the clothes because they were living in that time frame. Also, Bern is clearly angry about the officers. And I think it's interesting that she says officers, but I'm sure that the enlisted men also were doing this. I don't know, but okay. The officers who are dating Japanese women or DACs and then bring their wives and children over to Japan later like they did nothing. I call this the red dog issue. I know, due to the internet, that he was married with 2 kids. And I'm 90 to 95% certain that Peg did not know he was married. It got me thinking, how would the women of that time know if the guys they were dating were married or not? No internet, and clearly the guys covered up for each other. I don't think there was much of an incentive for the married guys to be honest. Bern was clearly peeved about something in particular, which I knew what inspired her rant. I continue to wonder if at any point they found out about Red Dog being married. But so far, we haven't answered that mystery. There's a reference to the Japanese Self-Defense Forces, JSDF. The JSDF were formed on July 1st, 1954, incorporating the existing National Security Force and establishing the ground, maritime, and air self-defense forces. This marked a period of increasing Japanese responsibility for their own defense, with a gradual withdrawal of U.S. and ground troops from areas like Kyushu and Hokkaido beginning that year. And then they've talked several times about the old Kaijo building in Tokyo, and Peg talks about it in letter 158. So I found out it was built in 1918. It was a huge building. It was confiscated and used by U.S. forces after the war, and then it was returned to the Japanese in 1956, and it has since been torn down. Hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope you're enjoying the podcast, and if you are, please subscribe in Spotify. On Apple Podcasts, hit the plus button in the top right-hand corner and rate. This will help my listeners find my podcast more easily. You can access the show's website at www.fromniclaytozama.com, where I posted photos and links from the episodes. The podcast is now available on iHeartRadio, Pandora, Patreon, and Amazon as well. New episodes will be available each Friday morning. The letters were written by my aunts Bern and Peg, transcribed by me. I write and record the show and have created the artwork and original music. Our producer is Zeke, our sound engineer is intern Sylvie, and the security is provided by intern Frey. Thanks to my great-grandparents, John and Helen, who loved us all and thought it was a good idea to save the letters. All rights reserved, 2024.